What's up? Welcome to Chaos Live. I'm Christopher Chaos, of course, obviously, if you're tuning in. So this is the live show that I do about weekly, and we hang out with you, the viewers who are hanging out live, and anybody who's watching post it being live, because after it's live, it goes up and goes just normal video-wise, and then people can check this out and even leave comments in that video and stuff. So here's how it works. I usually have some topics I talk about over this way. I'll get the hang of this eventually. Over this way, I have some topics I'll talk about in this video, add on to it as we go along, and also answer questions if you guys have questions in the live chat. And we'll just hang out, and that's usually what this is all about. So we'll hang out. So if you are here live right now, it's live, and you can leave questions in the chat here in a little bit if you want, or just say hi. That's cool too. Let me know that there's real people watching. That's cool too. And make sure my chat works too, because that's always a plus to try out. So what's up, people that are watching live? If you are not watching live and you're watching afterwards, then that's cool too as well. If you want questions answered, then you can leave questions in the comment section of this video after it was live and everything too. So either way works for me. We're doing this at a little bit of a different time than normally. Normally I do this in the evenings. It could be fine. It could be horrible. We'll see how this kind of goes. Maybe this will be a shorter episode than normal. Usually you do this for about an hour, but we'll see how this kind of ends up going. But we'll try this out for this time. It's really only, okay, so the real reason I'm doing it earlier than I normally do it in the evenings. We're doing this kind of afternoon-ish, and it's for a really nerdy reason. So my girlfriend, she's big into, or not MMA, but well, she is big into MMA too, but she's big into WWE, into wrestling, and today is WWE's Royal Rumble. So I want to watch the Royal Rumble with her, you know, be a good boyfriend, hang out and watch with her. I used to watch wrestling when I was younger as a kid. Hanging out and watching wrestling was awesome. So that's what we're going to do today, this evening, is watch wrestling together as a couple. And so that's why the live stream is earlier than it normally is because the Royal Rumble is on tonight, and I like that one. That one's kind of fun to watch. It's kind of entertaining. So that's why I'm a little bit earlier than normal. So what's up, Logan? What's up, God, you guys with these names? JT. I'm just gonna call you JT. How about that? I'll call you JT. So thanks for joining us. Thanks for being some of the first people into the live chat. We even got at the very top my little test one to make sure my chat was working earlier when I tried jumping in on this and everything. So awesome. What do you think about UFC fans who hate on WWE? I don't care. WWE, I mean, I'm not somebody who thinks like the WWE is real. I mean, there is portions that are real because like when someone gets thrown off of a ring, that is real, and that probably hurts a little bit, but they're kind of like stuntmen where you have to kind of learn how to take a fall. That way you don't get injured and stuff. So, I mean, of course it's scripted and everything, but certain things are probably pretty painful when they still get hit with chairs and all that kind of stuff. Obviously it's scripted, but you know, I think it's just entertainment. That's how I thought of it when I was a kid. It's entertainment. Well, as a kid, I was a little bit more skeptical to believe that it might be real, but of course, I don't believe it's real now. Neither does my girlfriend. It's just a TV show. It's a TV show with some entertainment to watch. So I will occasionally watch it with her, and it's kind of fun to watch. Hey, finally made it to a live video. Awesome. What's up, Shauna? So, a couple things. So let's talk about some of the main topics first, and we'll get into some questions and all that kind of stuff as well. First topic I got on my little agenda here is the Ranger video corrections. So if you've watched my latest video about how a soldier becomes an Army Ranger, a couple things. Of course, I'm not high speed. I did not join the Rangers. I did not do anything high speed stuff like becoming a Ranger. So with a lot of my videos, there's some stuff I'm able to kind of gather from like my experiences, and then research some stuff on the internet, and then kind of combine that stuff with my knowledge and fill in the blanks of what I didn't know from research on the internet and everything, where the Ranger video I really knew nothing about. So that one is all complete research that I had to do online and try to give my spin on it, with a little bit of knowledge of just basic Army stuff, but really no knowledge whatsoever as far as Rangers. So there are a few things in the video that I made mistakes on, and I talked to a buddy at work after the video was live, and we started talking about it, and I was like, oh crap, I messed some stuff up. So talk a little bit about those in this video. The first one is, while what I describe in the video is talking about Ranger School is really kind of a leadership school. Yes, you do get the tab, but it's kind of up to personal opinion on whether or not someone feels that going to ranger school makes them a ranger. Yes, they have a ranger tab, but really a lot of people have the mindset that real rangers are the ones that are in the 75th Ranger Regiment. And just going to ranger school does not get you into the ranger regiment. And I put a correction in the description of the video and also pinned a comment to the very top that I posted about it, saying that just because you go to ranger school does not put you in the ranger regiment. It is one step closer and it does help you out a lot, but it doesn't, in some people's minds, it doesn't make you a ranger. So that one's kind of up for debate. Some people will say that no, you're not a ranger. Some people say, yeah, you went to the ranger school, screw it, you're a ranger. So that's kind of a little bit of a mistake in the video as well. But then there's RASP, which is the Ranger, I forget, I don't even remember what it was that it was called, but basically that is the selection process to actually get into the 75th Ranger Regiment. So that is an additional school, and they have different levels of that as well. But if you do the very first level of RASP and you accomplish that, then you can go into the Ranger Regiment. So there are some soldiers that simply just do RASP first. That gets them into the Ranger Regiment. But then if they want to get promoted to a sergeant or and above, then they're going to have to go to Ranger School, which is mostly what I'm talking about in that video. Mostly in that video, I'm talking about Ranger School. But you need that extra piece if you want to be in the 75th Ranger Regiment and in some people's minds be actually considered a Ranger. So that's a little bit of a correction kind of on that piece in there. So like I said, it's up to some people's interpretation of whether you're a Ranger because you go to Ranger School or if you're only a Ranger because you went to the 75th Ranger Regiment. So that's just kind of that piece that I wanted to talk about as far as some little bit of misinformation, or I guess it's only really towards the end where I said that after you complete Ranger School, you can go to 75th Ranger Regiment. So that part is false. So, but I had the correction in the description. But a lot of people aren't going to probably read the description. They're just going to watch the video and then give me crap in the comments about it. But hey, to each his own. So let's see, how do we pronounce this? J the Vorn. Is that right then? So J the Vorn. I probably won't remember that. I have horrible memory. I don't know if that's a veteran thing or just me, but J the Vorn. Can't wait for the Rumble, for the Royal Rumble. Big fan. Awesome. Yeah, it's kind of a fun one to do. It's a fun one to watch. So I like watching that. So I guess I can add in a little bit of WWE stuff into this in a way that's Army related. I did get to see wrestling in Iraq. When I was stationed in Iraq, the second deployment, the WWE came to Baghdad, and they did a little show for us on Baghdad. They did the was it Salute to the Troops or whatever show that they do. So that was pretty cool. We went and hung out there, and I didn't get to meet any of the wrestlers or anything like that. We hung out and watched the show. It was entertaining. It was fun. I was standing in the crowd. I think I've watched the playback of it, and I've been able to somewhat identify myself in the crowd, but it's not very easy to kind of do unless you really pause the video. But it was pretty cool. We had our mechanics had to build a bed for the big show. The big show, all the wrestlers were staying like in this palace that was on the Baghdad International Airport where I was stationed at in Baghdad, and they had to build a special bed for this guy because he's so big, and none of the beds were going to be able to accommodate him. So they had to build a special bed for him to be able to sleep on and everything. And then even like when the wrestlers showed up to do wrestling at where they had the ring set up and everything in the Baghdad airport base or whatever, they all showed up on bus while the big show had to show up in his own SUV because it's too much of a pain in the ass, I guess, probably to fit inside the bus. So that was kind of funny little story, I guess. Wrestling related to military life. So that was kind of a cool thing. Got to watch them film wrestling right there and stuff. So pretty awesome. And then Bit Expert, what's up? Welcome to the live stream. For any of you who decided to come join in on this oddly timed live stream. Normally it's in the evenings. Today it's in the mid-afternoon because the Royal Rumble is on tonight, as I talked about a little bit earlier. So definitely the chat is not as active as it normally is in the evenings. So maybe this isn't a great time to do live streams, but we'll give it a shot. I figured I'd try it out, and if anything, then it's still a fun video for anybody who wants to watch afterwards as well. I do have a featured comment that we'll talk about here in a little bit, so I'll work on that. It's for this guy from, this comment from, was it Mitchell Moore, I believe? The text on my screen is really small. So, but Mitchell Moore, he has a comment from another video, from the Ranger video actually, and I'll kind of address that topic as well and kind of work on that here. How's the delay? I feel like maybe there might be a bit of a delay, but I don't know if this just, you guys aren't very talkative in the chat this time, or if there's a massive delay, so it takes a while. we'll see how the stream holds up. Last live stream, I had a lot of problems with the stream, keeping good quality and screwing up. But right now, so far, we're holding up pretty good and everything. So that's always a plus. So what's up, Jumpman Keel? And then Bit Expert saying the time is fine by me. Yeah, this is a good time, but I just don't know if a lot of people are gonna kind of want to hang out at this time. I don't know how this will kind of play out. I still like kind of doing the evenings, but I don't know if that screws up for a lot of people if they don't like the evenings. I don't know what the magic time is for doing these live things, but I don't know. We'll get the hang of it eventually, I'm sure. We'll figure something out. Logan asking, what kind of missions did you have to do? So in my first deployment, if you're talking about deployment stuff, when I went to Iraq, my first time going to Iraq, it was mostly humanitarian aid missions. We would take supplies out to villagers to drop off for these, they're called halal meals. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing them right. I think that's how they were pronounced, but they were like these little meals for Muslims and, you know, that kind of culture and stuff. And so we would drop off these meals to them. Sometimes we drop off mattresses and just stuff to help out communities that were really kind of struggling. So I did a lot of those humanitarian aid missions of dropping stuff off. We would do stuff where we would go and drop off other supplies, either wood or whatever, to people who need to make repairs to their homes. So we dropped that kind of stuff off, and then just basic log packs, which is just transporting supplies from base to base to different areas and stuff. So that was kind of what we did my first deployment. My second deployment was mostly barrier stuff. So we would set up barriers on the side of the roads, barriers around bases, fobs, cobs, and a lot of barrier stuff, just setting up different barriers and stuff. So that's kind of what we did on that one. How often do you go to the range? So technically in the Army, you're supposed to go at least every 6 months to qualify with your weapon. Sometimes you did it more often. You're not supposed to do it less, but usually most of the time you do it more often. But at least 6 months you'd go to the range. And then there would also be other stuff other than just trying to qualify with your weapon. There'd be like a 50 cal ranger that would come up, and they would want soldiers to go qualify with the 50 cal machine gun or the 240 Bravo or whatever the case might be. So I mean, it just kind of depends, but at a minimum 6 months at least you're going to the range and everything. So hey Chris, wish I could leave you a super chat, but iOS currently doesn't support it. No big deal. Don't worry about it. I mean, they're cool and all, but they're not a must or, you know, any big deal. But I'm just thankful that you guys are here hanging out. Is what really means more to me than anybody donating money to me is people hanging out with me, asking questions, having a chat, or even just hanging out and watching. So you just being here is awesome as well. Emily asks, what is the most dangerous missions did you have to do? I don't know if there was anything particular that stands out as the most dangerous. I mean, being a truck driver, being in transportation, being on the roads all the time in Iraq, it was always really dangerous because you had that high risk of IEDs, the improvised explosive devices, being set up on the side of the roads and blowing up on you and everything like that. I am thankful that I never had anything like that happen to me. I've had friends that have had it happen to them where either they've gotten injured from it or just nothing at all but blowing out their tires. So it kind of varies. It depends on how, bad the IED was. But, just being out on the roads can be pretty dangerous with that risk of IEDs. It was a little bit more sketchier like my first deployment because we were out in more open space. So it was, I don't know, it seemed a little bit more weirder because you'd have a lot of open desert, so you didn't know if someone's hiding out in the bushes or waiting to ambush you or whatever. But I mean, even in the city is pretty sketchy too, because when I was in Baghdad, my second deployment, you have a lot of buildings, so you don't know if there's somebody up in a window or up on a rooftop or whatever, just waiting to take shots at you. So, I mean, a lot of it feels pretty dangerous. There wasn't anything particularly that stands out to me as being super dangerous, but it's just kind of how it was for me, anyways, I guess. So let's talk about another little topic. I have had, not too many, just a couple times where people don't like in the videos how I elaborate that there's some stuff in the video that I'm leaving out when I'm like, say, for example, talking about Rangers or how basic training works or how rank works or whatever. But some people, I guess feel annoyed that I mention that or whatever. But the reason why I do that is because there's times when I don't mention it, that I'm not going to explain everything, that there's going to be some stuff left out, And then I end up with a handful of comments of people saying, well, you forgot about this, you forgot about that, you forgot about this. There's so much stuff in the Army that changes. You go in and they come out with one policy, and then a couple months later it changes, or they come out with one uniform and then it changes. When I was in the Army, the slogan changed 3 times. When I first joined, it was Be All You Can Be. Then they changed it to Army of One, and then they changed it to Army Strong. So that changed just 3 times of my 10 years of being in the Army. Headgear changed a bunch of times. Different uniforms changed. So a lot of stuff changes. So that's why a lot of times at the beginning of the videos, I try to elaborate that, hey, this is just a basic understanding of this. There's some stuff that I don't dive into because there are all sorts of other like scenarios of how someone could get promoted, or how someone could become a ranger or whatever. And I'm trying to really just cover the basic parts of how someone could do this or do that without going into every possibility of it. And I try to elaborate that because there's always someone who's going to, you know, say something in the comments, oh, well, technically they can get promoted if they, you know, jump on their left foot 4 times and rub their stomach at the same time, you know, something crazy. No, that's not a real thing, by the way. But, you know, people always give me crap in the comments sometimes if I leave something out. So I try to emphasize, even though it may be annoying to some, emphasize that I am not covering everything. I'm only covering some of the real bare bone basics kind of a thing. So, so the delay is like 5 seconds or more, but it's fine. Good. Hopefully that's not too bad. I have a laptop down here to kind of watch it. Usually I'll have like another screen up over here to watch the live stream to see how it's performing, but I have something else up over there. So I just have a laptop up over here to kind of monitor, and all sorts of crazy business going on. So sometimes you guys can help me out with that fun stuff as well. Logan asks, do people try to look for IEDs, or does nobody look? Yeah, you're supposed to. You're supposed to look for them. You do, like, we'll do a lot of classes when I was in the Army. You do a lot of different IED detection classes to how to look for suspicious things. Like they'll put out indicators. You know, maybe it's like a pile of rocks that are stacked up in certain increments, and that's like a timing trigger to time the vehicle for when to set it off. Sometimes the obvious stuff, like a wire going across the road, and even sometimes like some obvious stuff is really set to make you do different actions that they know about. You know, I won't get too elaborate with that, but you know, the enemy watches us. They watch what we do. They watch how we respond to things. And if they see that when they do this, we do this, then they start kind of trying to, you know, counter that by doing different actions. So they know, hey, if we make something really obvious out there, then they're going to stop and do this. And that's our moment to get them. So, you know, there's a lot of different scenarios that we have to train up for that, to look for different deterrents of what could possibly be an IED, holes on the side of the road. So that's why we would start doing a lot of those barrier missions where we would put barriers on the side of the roads, because it made it harder for the enemy to put barriers next to the road, or put IEDs next to the road if there's a barrier blocking it. So that's kind of a lot of that, why we were doing that in certain areas and stuff where it was really high on IEDs and stuff. So how nerve-wracking were the IEDs? I've heard horror stories about them. So you do get complacent, I say, a little bit, you know, because, you know, when you first show up in Iraq, even both times, both my first and second deployment, you show up in Iraq and you've done a lot of training on, you know, IEDs and all that kind of stuff, and you're worried about it. You know, you're worried that, you know, this pile of trash that we're passing by could have an IED inside of it. So you kind of get a little bit worried, and, you know, as we pass by it. But then after a while, if nothing happens, then some people, you know, kind of start getting complacent and be like, it's just a pile of trash. And then that's when they hit you. But thankfully, like I said, that's never happened to me. So I didn't have to worry about it. But, you know, it is still nerve-wracking. I'd say more nerve-wracking at the beginning, especially after a while. If nothing's happening, then it starts getting less nerve-wracking. And you start getting a little complacent, which is wrong. You should always keep your guard up and always kind of be aware of that and stuff. So it's kind of a crazy thing. Longest and shortest deployments, Emily asks. So I've only done the 2. My first deployment was a year, and my second deployment was a year and a half. The year and a half one sucked. That was such a long time to be there. I felt like I was there forever. So that was it. It was a 12-month and a 15-month deployment were my 2 deployments. So it sucks. I know a lot of the times, some units are starting to do more of 6-month deployments. I know like the Air Force does that, where they only do 6-month deployments, which would have been nice. Makes it a little bit to where you have a little bit more time with family and friends and time back home and everything, and not so much time being spent in a foreign country, in a war zone and all that stuff. And I think the Army was doing that with some units where they would only do 6 months, but for the most part, I think units still do like a year in Iraq or Afghanistan or wherever you're going to go to. So that's that part's no fun. Where to leave off on. Even though someone picks an MOS, for example, 12 Alpha, do they specialize in something such as engineering, nuclear engineering, etc.? They're kind of, sort of, in a way. I mean, usually you stick to your MOS. There are times when soldiers will branch out of their MOS because they don't have somebody in that position to fill it. I'll give you an example. I was an 88 mic, as some of you probably know from other videos and live chats. And so I was a truck driver. It basically means transportation. So I would do transportation stuff, but we didn't have like an ammo guy in our section, which is a specific MOS for people who deal with ammo. So I had the dual job of doing transportation, but also managing the ammo. So I would have to be the one to go pick up the ammo, to sign for the ammo, to sign the ammo over to other units that were having to use the ammo for ranges and turn in the ammo and all that kind of stuff. When normally that's a specific MOS, a specific person that deals with the ammo, and I would do that as well. So there's some cases of it. It won't get extreme, like you're not going to have an 88 mic, a truck driver, all of a sudden have to fill in as, you know, being a doctor or something like that. I was going to say an MP, but that in certain aspects you can do that, because like when I was in Korea, we had this thing called MP augmentee, where different soldiers would have to help the MPs at the front gate. And they even have that still in garrison here in the United States too, where even though a soldier isn't an MP, they may work at the front gate and help, you know, check IDs and search vehicles and stuff like that. But they're not going to be the people pulling people over. That's specifically going to be MPs. You're not going to just suddenly get thrown into a position of, you know, driving around a patrol car on base when you're not an MP. So certain things, you know, in different aspects will take you to do other jobs that are normally done by somebody else if that's not available and everything. So that just kind of depends and all that stuff. Let's see. My oldest brother was in the Army during the late 1970s. The uniform have changed. He really didn't mind the changes at all. Yeah, there's been a lot of uniform changes over the years. It's been kind of crazy. I went from wearing BDUs, which was just the like jungle kind of camouflage, I guess you could say, the woodland camouflage is what it's called. Then wearing the DCUs, which is the desert uniform during my first deployment, and then switching over to the ACUs. And then I got out just before they started switching over to the newer camouflage, the OCP or whatever it's called. I forget what it's called. But essentially, yeah, there's been a lot of different ones. DB Tech, what's up, man? I got you on Instagram. Good friend on Instagram. He's awesome. Check out his channel. Does some cool tech reviews. Just recently hit 1,000 subscribers. Congratulations for that. He asked, where did you go to basic and AIT? I went to basic training in Fort Benning, Georgia, and I went to my AIT, or Advanced Individual Training, in Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri for 88 mics. So my basic training was one of the first, actually the first one in Fort Benning to go from having only training infantry 11 Bravo soldiers to training other MOSs. I have a video somewhere on my channel that talks about that a little bit and how the drill sergeants were not happy with that. And then my AIT in Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri was 5 weeks long. So my AIT is not very long compared to some people's AITs that are really long and last like months and months and months. So I got kind of lucky on that end. Worst IED is body bombs. Yeah, well, suicide bombers, I guess is the technical term. David Wagner is saying. So yeah, suicide bombers, pretty bad. I did not have any experience with suicide bombers. We did have a soldier that was working one of the like checkpoints, and a guy ran by and dropped like a sandbag that had an IED inside of it, and it went off. Thankfully, it was not a really bad IED. It wasn't like really potent or explosive or whatever. It did a little bit of damage, some minor injuries. A couple people got a little bit of shrapnel in their leg. Nothing life-threatening or anything super serious from it, thankfully. But yeah, suicide bombers would be a pretty bad one. Those are people who put like vests on and they have explosives on, and they'll run up to a gate or run up to, you know, a checkpoint or whatever with the vest or a convoy, and then detonate themselves and it blows up. And they also do that with cars too, so where they fill it explosive with the car and then detonate the car. So, hey Chris, sorry I can't stick around. Really busy day at work. We'll catch the stream later. Take care. Thanks, man. Thanks for hanging out and thanks for joining. No matter how long you joined for. So thanks for hanging out. How's the food in the military? Emily asks. It's actually pretty good. You would think that it's pretty bad. You see a lot of stuff on TV and movies or whatever, where they like throwing down slop on a tray and all that kind of stuff. But if you actually go in and eat in the DFAC, it's actually really good food. For a lot of times, like in garrison, a lot of the food is made by civilians. There are soldiers that will do a lot of the stuff of supervising the civilians to do things, but just a lot of times the civilians, especially like in Iraq, like when we were in Iraq, a lot of the food in the chow hall was done by like people from India or from another country. And then the soldier side was mainly supervising, making sure that they were doing the food correctly and not poisoning us, I guess, or, doing anything that could, cooking food in the wrong way that could harm us or whatever. So a lot of on that side, they would do that unless they were at a more remote kind of camp. Then the soldiers would be usually the ones cooking the food, but at all the larger FOBs, usually civilians are cooking it. And then even back here at the state sides, a lot of the food is being cooked by civilians as well, and then kind of supervised by soldiers, or helped and assisted by soldiers and stuff too. And the food's pretty good. Usually they'll have a combination of healthy stuff and bad junk food kind of food. It's called mainline and shortline. So you usually have mainline food, which will be like your healthy stuff. Maybe it's meatloaf, maybe it's, spaghetti, whatever that's kind of somewhat healthy. And then usually you'll also have short line, which is your fast food type of stuff, burgers, hot dogs, and all that kind of stuff. And you can choose which line you want to go to and which line you want to get food from. So food's not too bad. DB Tech saying I was in basic when 9/11 happened and our training got messed up quite a bit. Lots of changes that we had, doing security detail before we finished marksmanship. Yeah, that was a crazy time. I was already at my first duty station during 9/11. I was stationed at Fort Riley, Kansas. I had just gotten done with physical training. Me and my roommate were back in our barracks room, getting changed, getting ready for our 9 o'clock formation. We were listening to the radio, and on the radio they were talking about the plane hitting the first tower, and we're just listening to it on the radio. We're not watching it on TV. So we initially thought that, it was just some small plane, a little small passenger plane or something, maybe some inexperienced pilot, something like that, ran into the building or whatever. We didn't know it was a big airliner. And then they started talking about a second plane hitting the building. We're like, this doesn't sound like a coincidence anymore. So it was a little crazy. So we went downstairs after we got dressed, and they had inside the orderly room, which is like the little hangout area inside the barracks, or not the orderly room, but the day room. Day room is like the hangout area for the barracks. And we went down there before formation, and people were watching it on TV, and we were seeing all this stuff. We're like, holy crap, this is crazy. They started talking about information. We were on alert and everything. We were supposed to be leaving for the National Training Center. I was supposed to actually leave the next day. My flight was supposed to leave. We already had some people that were already at the National Training Center prepping and getting ready for the rest of the unit to show up. My flight ended up getting delayed a couple days because of everything that was going on. And also prior to that, you used to be able to just drive right on post. You could drive onto a military installation. They wouldn't check IDs, nothing like that. They were in the process of kind of making it to where you had to get your IDs checked, because we were just starting to get these stickers that had to go on our windshields, to where we would go through the gate, and if we had a valid sticker, then they would let us through. Once 9/11 hit, they immediately went to making it to where post was closed, and you had to check IDs, and you had to have a sticker to. And if you didn't have a sticker, you had to get your vehicle searched and get a temporary pass and everything. But 9/11 really forced people to make the post closed, and so it was a crazy time being in during 9/11. A lot of changes happened around that time. Knights Templar, what's up? How's it going? Welcome to the live stream, as it is starting to slow down and possibly crash. Hang on, I'm waiting for the dad to come back. All right, we're back, I think. I don't know how much you got cut off, but I was just saying, what's up, Knights Templar? Thanks for joining. You're late. That's what he says anyways. The stream is going bad, as it has before. I don't know if it's the way I'm ingesting the information or the settings. I don't know if because of the way I schedule it, it works off of a different server. So I might have to stop scheduling these and using those settings, and maybe just do the old school other way of doing it, because it seems like I have problems the last 2 times when I've used the scheduling process of trying to live stream. So right now it says I have bad reception as far as the live stream goes. Can you guys still hear what I'm talking about right now? How bad is it? Is it buffering often, a lot? But yeah, hey, Knights Templar, welcome to live stream. Knights Templar in the British Marines, correct? Deployed right now, so you have internet access still where you're deployed at. that was the thing too. Like when I was in Iraq, we got to have you could have internet. It was expensive for really crappy internet. Even like Knights Templar saying now South Africa has terrible internet connection. We didn't have very good connection in Iraq either. I think I was paying like $75, and I want to say my download speed was like 15 megabytes, 20 megabytes, something like that. You couldn't really stream a movie. It was a pain trying to watch YouTube videos because like my first deployment, we didn't have internet. You'd have to go to like the internet cafe, and the internet worked okay, but YouTube wasn't very big back then. During my first deployment, it was still kind of coming up. And then the second deployment, you know, obviously YouTube was a lot bigger by then because that was 2007 to 2009. And yeah, the bitrate would be like horrible trying to watch videos on the internet in my little room that I had during my second deployment. So paying $70 for pretty horrible internet. So it was horrible. DB Tech, I did basic at Benning 2 back in 2001. Awesome. Yeah, I was at Benning in 99. So it was crazy. And then, but I was a 31 Charlie, did AIT at Fort Gordon. Awesome, man. Jumpman Keel, do you have a cab? No. I did not do anything high speed. There's only one time that was close to qualifying for a cab where we were driving and we had some people somewhere nearby that were shooting over our heads at some soldiers on a building near us. But that's the closest thing. I didn't have anything too crazy. We would have some mortar attacks occasionally on the base that I was in during my second deployment, not really during my first deployment, but during my second deployment, we would get hit by mortars occasionally, but they usually landed pretty far away. They usually didn't land anywhere close to where we were at. You'd hear them, you'd hear the boom and everything, but nothing qualified me for a cab or anything like that. So yeah, people saying it's slow, having a little bit of catch back. What other transportation MOSs are there and what do they do? I don't know all of them. There is some that are more of the organization piece of transportation that don't do the, you know, the whole actual driving the vehicles. They're more the behind the scenes paperwork kind of thing. There's ones that do train equipment, transportation with trains, transportation with boats in the Army. So I don't really know all of them, but usually the way you'd figure it out is the 88 series. So like I was an 88 Mike, which is wheeled transportation. They have all sorts of other 88 series MOSs, and if you were looking for other MOSs that were in the transportation field, you would just kind of research other 88 series MOSs because that's kind of that field. What is the worst thing that occurred when you were in basic training? I don't know. It all horrible. Oh, okay, so here's the story. I was just telling someone about this the other day. Other than, you know, getting smoked, you got smoked crazy, which is being, you know, really worn out and exhausted and physical fitness, you know, all this sorts of stuff. You know, you have all that kind of obvious stuff, getting yelled at, you know, little sleep, having to do crazy stuff. Other than all that kind of stuff, when I was in reception, which is the very first week you're there, the very beginning kind of a thing, this is probably the worst thing that happened, you know, outside of, you know, just being physically exhausted. We were at Fort Benning, the way it used to be, you had like this, at the reception area, you had like this upper tier kind of level, and then these stairs that went down to a lower level, which was where the DFAC was at. So everybody would form up at the upper level, and then there would be like 4 or 5 lines at the bottom level where soldiers have to file down, and then you stand in line and everything. Well, a soldier tried to kill himself by jumping off that upper level, which was probably only maybe 2 stories, maybe a 2-story fall. And a soldier tried jumping off of that, trying to kill himself, and he ended up landing on top of another soldier and just jacking that soldier up. Broke both of that guy's legs, and that guy had to, you know, stay in reception while his legs healed. The other guy, of course, got kicked out of the Army, but the other guy, you know, he wanted to continue on, but he got stuck being in reception for a long time. It was horrible. But I remember, you know, I was down there at the very bottom waiting to go into the chow hall, and then all of a sudden I hear a bunch of people yelling, and then like a boom, because like echoed through like the little area and stuff, and then looking back and a bunch of people crowded around the area, and then the drill sergeant's coming down and some other people coming down to try to help the people, and it was crazy. So it was pretty wild. Knights Templar was at 50 euros was the symbol. So that's how much it costs for your internet. That's horrible. That sucks. Would engineer officers ever see combat/control an infantry platoon? Yeah, I think like there's the combat engineers and all that stuff. I mean, you could easily, like, especially like combat engineers, I'm not 100% sure, but combat engineers, from what I understand, are like the guys that will be out like digging tank ditches, digging, you know, some kind of obstacle for the enemy, and they could potentially easily be out there, you know, even an officer being out there leading his platoon to make sure the obstacle is done correctly, and then all of a sudden come under fire and all that kind of stuff. So, Abdullah, how are you doing, man? What's up? Emily, why did you choose the Army over the Navy and Air? It really was just the Army recruiter was a little more persistent than anybody else. I was interested in the Air Force and the Army. I originally wanted to be a mechanic, and then I started leaning more towards the Army because I figured if I wanted to be a wheeled vehicle mechanic, the Army would have more wheeled vehicles than the Air Force would. Obviously, Air Force still does have wheeled vehicles, but it's not as big of a thing as the Army is. So I was leaning more towards that. The Air Force recruiter wasn't really as persistent as the Army recruiter was, so I went with the Army. It was kind of, that was the only really reason why on that. One of these other topics that I haven't gotten to over here, which is the next video. The next video I'm going to do and work on this week is going to be the current Army uniforms. So I'm going to talk about the physical fitness uniform that the Army currently uses, the day-to-day uniform, their camouflage uniform, the dress uniform. I might add a little bit to it as far as maybe some of the accessories, like when they're in combat, they add, I don't know. And then I'll get a little bit more in depth as to what different pieces on the uniform mean. So if you want to know all about Army uniforms and all that fun stuff as far as what uniform soldiers wear during certain times and all that stuff, then that'll be the next video that'll be coming out this week or whatever, as soon as I start putting it all together and everything. So just a heads up on what the next video is. So there you go, that kind of a thing. Did you ever think about being a Marine? No. I mean, I have nothing against Marines. Marines are pretty hardcore. We had Marines in our AIT when I was in Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri, that we did a little bit of training with and stuff. But I don't know. I just picked the Army. I don't know. You did a good job on your Ranger video. I was surprised you did not include Delta in the comment about Ranger versus SF. Thank you. Thank you for saying I did a good job. I don't know if you caught the beginning of the live stream where I was talking about some of the mistakes that I did make as far as a soldier completing Ranger school and going to the Ranger regiment when they actually have to complete RASP before they can actually do that. But I made that correction in the description and in the comment because I screwed that up. I am going to do a video soon that hopefully I do a little bit better research on about the Special Forces. That also include like Delta, because Delta is a detachment of the Special Forces out of Fort Bragg, is it? Or Fort Benning? I forget, I think it's Fort Bragg. But I will do a video on Special Forces. And the good thing about that is at least I have a little bit of knowledge of SF training and SF because I've had a couple of people that I know that have gone to SF training. There's actually a coworker that I work with that he has gone to SF training and everything. And I think that's probably also a good segue into our featured comment for this live stream, asked by Mitchell Moore. And he's basically asking about the SF, saying that he heard that SF training is like 60 months long, and if I think that you know, the training for Rangers is crazier than the SF, I think is what it was. What was the text? I'm sorry, the text is really small on my screen, but it was I think that the training should be crazier than the Rangers. What do you think? I think both are awesome, but not everyone can be a Green Beret. So yeah, so but Special Forces training is actually much longer than just 60 days. It is probably more like a year or 2 years long for SF training. Like I said, I've had a couple of people that I know start SF training. They went to SFAS, I believe is what it's called. And it's just that piece, I think, is 8 weeks. If you make it past SFAS, then there's all sorts of other stuff. You have to do SEERS training, which is the search evasion. I forget what it stands for, but it's basically being able to withstand being practically tortured and questioned by the enemy. They have to go through that training. They have to go through, I think they're already supposed to be like airborne, I think, or something like that, or maybe they have to do airborne if they haven't already done it. But they also have additionally language training, and that language training I think is like 6 months alone based on what language that they are going to be doing. So SF training is actually like more like a year or 2 years long. All the people that I've known have only gone through the SFAS part, the very first phase of SF training. The one guy that I knew, he got injured. He was towards the end of SFAS, and an ammo can got dropped on his foot, and he couldn't continue doing the road march that they were on, so he had to drop out of the course because he couldn't continue, and he had injured his foot. The other guy that I work with, coworker, I believe he told me he didn't pass the land nav portion, so he had to get dropped out of the class for doing that, and then he went back to it again and tried SFAS again to do special forces training, and then a second time ended up injuring himself during, I forget what he said he was doing. He was doing one of the courses or one of the portions of the school, and he injured himself and was not able to continue doing the training. The medics wouldn't let him continue, so that was kind of a tough thing for him. And then another guy that I was stationed with, he was going to SFAS as I was getting out of the Army. So I don't know how that ended up turning out and if he ever, accomplished it and made it all the way through. But Special Forces training is really long. It's like I said, it's like a year or 2 years long. It's a pretty long training kind of requirement to be able to go through it all. So that was kind of the featured comment. So thank you for that. If you want to have your comment featured, just make sure that maybe after this is done being live and it's just on its regular run of being shown on YouTube, leave a comment in the comment section of this video after it's done being live, and maybe it'll be something I'll feature in the next live stream. So always make sure to do that. Also, if you have a question that maybe I didn't answer in the live stream, or you thought of it later and maybe you want to answer to it, or you want to wait until the next live stream to answer it, then make sure to come back to the video after it's been processed by YouTube, and you can check all that stuff out and stuff. So do you think soldiers to wear some variation of dress uniform during work looks more professional? That's actually why the Sergeant Major of the Army wants that other uniform that I talked about in one of my videos, where I was talking about the changes to Army uniforms, where it's got the pinks and greens, which is an old school style, and that's pretty much why they want to go with that, is because it would be more of a kind of a day-to-day type of uniform, instead of always wearing the camouflage one. And I think it would look pretty cool. It wouldn't be for everybody. People who worked in the motor pool would not be able to kind of utilize it, but people who maybe worked in an office or did certain other jobs could easily probably walk around in that more of a dress uniform. And I think it'd look pretty cool. It'd be a little bit more professional looking, because I don't think you always have to be camouflaged and running around doing camo stuff. So I think it'd be pretty good. So Emily, do you have to use spray on starch to get a crease? Oh, so you're talking about the uniform? The old uniforms, when you used to wear the BDUs, the battle dress uniforms, the woodland camouflage, those ones we used to use starch. The current ones that they use now, you don't do that with, just because I think it's bad for the material, and they're just not that type of uniform anymore. So they don't do that anymore with that. This is Michael. Thank you for your service. Well, thank you. Appreciate it very much. And then he gave me the answer for that SEER school that I couldn't remember what it stood for. Survival, Escape, Resistance, and Evasion. So there you go. That's what SEER's school, wherever you actually say it. But that's the school that Special Forces have to go through. You can do it outside of that. You don't have to go through Special Forces training to go to that school. You can do it outside of it, I believe. But typically that's a requirement, though, for Special Forces. They have to go through that school. There are a lot of, Knights Templar, there are a lot of drug cartels in South Africa. Yeah, I would imagine so. So be careful of that. Be on the lookout for, I imagine you probably have a problem with the militia. I think that I've always heard stuff about some crazy militia kind of gangs and stuff down there in South Africa. So watch out for all that stuff. What is the worst time to get injured during basic training, Emily asks? Anytime, really. Because it depends on this, like how bad the injury is. Because if you're in basic training, you get injured, they're going to recycle you is what it's called. You're going to have to be on hold while you're recovering from this injury if it's bad enough that it's going to require some kind of recovery. Say, for example, you break your leg, or you break your wrist, or whatever the case might be, right? And it requires a recovery time. So you're going to have to recover. And then once you're done recovering, then you have to essentially, sometimes they'll make you start basic all over again, or they'll just have you kind of jump in on the next class that left off where you were at, kind of thing. It just kind of depends sometimes on the circumstances, but anytime really is a bad time to get injured during basic training, because that's just more time you have to spend in basic training in that kind of environment, instead of getting it done, getting it over with, move on to AIT, get that done and over with, and just actually get to a unit. Because that whole lifestyle of basic training AIT is way different than the lifestyle of once you are done with training and actually at your permanent duty station, your actual unit. It gets much better from there. So where else we got? Fort Bragg is the home of the Army Special Forces and the J.F. Kennedy School of Warfare. Delta occupies a portion of Fort Bragg. 3rd Special Forces Group is at Fort Bragg. Thank you, David. So yeah, so it was Fort Bragg then that where Delta is at for that. But then there's different groups. So I'll explain that when I do the video for Special Forces. But you have different groups that are at different locations. At Fort Carson, the base that I work on and I'm nearest to, and my last duty station, we have 10th Group, which is the 10th Special Forces Group. I forget where their duty assignment is, but each group has like their own specific country that's like their specialty, and that's usually what language you go to. So that also kind of comes into a key factor. So whatever language you end up studying before you become Special Forces also determines what group you're going to go to, because say, for example, if you are, learning German, well, then you want to be with whatever group goes to Germany and Europe and all that kind of stuff. So that kind of comes into play for that too. But for Fort Carson, 10th Group, I forget where they, I think maybe they might actually be Germany or Europe or something for 10th Group. I don't remember for sure, but 10th Group, 10th Special Forces Group is on Fort Carson, and then different groups are in different places. And then Delta, the detachment of Special Forces that's more elite and a little bit more high speed and do some more special operations stuff. They're out of Fort Bragg. Say it make you look tactical though with camo though. You're talking about that? What's that guy's name? There's a video. There's another guy. I think he was an Army Ranger, and he does YouTube. He's really popular, actually. He does really well on YouTube, and he's got some pretty funny stuff. And I think, I remember that term tactical from his videos. I forget what it is. He's also got a clothing line, AR-15, as in not the rifle, but as in Article 15 clothing. So he's got AR-15 clothing. That's kind of cool. Says I was in an engagement a couple of days ago. Oh yeah, you gotta be careful, Night Templar. It's crazy down in South Africa. DB Tech, I was a medical holdover at AIT for a blown out knee about 7 weeks after my class graduated. Yeah, so that sucks. There was people like when I went to basic training at AIT that you would see kind of jumping in with our class or whatever because they were medically held over because they got injured during a certain phase of basic training or AIT. And then they're just there longer than they need to be because they have to recover from the injury before they can move on. Unless their injury is really bad where they can get medically chaptered out of the Army. Otherwise, you're just kind of recovering and then continue your training, and that's just that much longer you have to spend in a training environment. And a training environment is way different than when you get to an actual unit. Advice before going into the Army? Mainly, that's what Jared asks. I would mainly say get in shape. I didn't really do that when I went into the Army. I wasn't really in bad shape. Like right now, I'm in really bad shape. So that's why I'm doing this whole 30-day challenge video. If you guys have seen that, if not, make sure to go to my channel. I have the first episode up right now. Second episode goes up tomorrow. But I was in medium shape before going into the Army, and it would have made it a lot easier if I was in good shape going into the Army, because it would have made things a lot easier to deal with, a lot easier to do. So I definitely recommend, working out, doing some exercises, running, doing some push-ups, doing some sit-ups, whatever you can do to get yourself into good shape. You don't have to be ripped and huge and muscular and bodybuilder or anything like that, but stamina is a big thing, especially like if you can do a lot of cardio to where you will be okay handling going on these runs and, getting smoked, being, having to do push-ups with everybody for like a long time. If you can build up your cardio for that, then that'll really help you when you transition to go to basic training and everything. So that's the biggest piece of advice I would say to anybody who's about to go into the Army, is to get in some good shape, cardio-wise mainly. I would think that would be the main focus for like the thing to target before you go into the Army. What did people think of the infantry officers without Ranger tab? I don't know. I've seen some officers with Ranger tabs, but for the most part, I would imagine it'd only be a big thing in certain units. But like with my units and stuff like that, if an officer had a Ranger tab, he was pretty high speed, because that means he went to the Ranger training for, Ranger school to get the tab, but it wasn't obviously in the Ranger regiment. But I don't know if it really mattered too much. Yeah, bit expert Matt Best. Yeah, that was the guy. That's the guy that I was thinking you were referring to. He makes some really awesome videos and all that stuff. Southern Sun, what's up? Welcome to the live stream. Abdullah, you gotta take off. Take care, man. Stay awesome. Do awesome stuff. All that kind of fun stuff. Did we cover everything that I was gonna talk about on here? I talked about the next video. Talked about the Ranger corrections. Why I kind of talk about how I only give basic info on the videos, and we're doing the Q&A kind of right now. So I guess that's kind of some of the main stuff. 10th Special Forces Group is Eurocom. Their AO is Eastern Europe. Yeah, that's what I thought. I thought they were like Europe for 10th Group. And 10th Group is out of Fort Carson. So I see those guys. I see them, you know, sometimes during training. Sometimes they'll come over to our building to do some training stuff and everything. So, did you see the president? No, I don't. I've never seen the president. Closest thing I've ever seen to someone high in office is they had one time we had what was it? He was a high-ranking kind of person, individual that was like in the president's office and everything. I can't remember. Was it the vice? I was going to say the vice president, but I don't think it was was he the vice president? Dick Cheney, vice president, right? I'm drawing a blank, but Dick Cheney, he came to do a little speech one time when I was in the Army and stuff, and we had to listen to the guy talk. I didn't really want to go to it, but they made us. We all had to go to this hangar and hang out and listen to Dick Cheney talk and all that kind of stuff. He was the vice president, right? He was the vice president for Bush, I think. See, I'm horrible. I'm so horrible with politics. It's not very good. Chief of Staff. I did meet the chairman of the Joint Chief of Staff. I got a coin from him. That was when I was in Iraq and everything. See, DB Tech, you may have answered this, but what is your civilian job at Carson? I am a JCR instructor, and JCR is a computer system that the military, the Army, the soldiers use for navigation, for messaging, for spot reports, so that if someone identifies an enemy or something, they can put it on the map and everybody else knows where the enemy is located at. And I teach soldiers how to use that system, and it's called JCR. The previous version before that was called FBCB2, and this is JCR is just the newer version of FBCB2. So I teach soldiers how to utilize that. But additionally, like this last week, we were doing an exercise, and that's just a lot of over-the-shoulder stuff while they're doing the exercise. So if they have questions about the system that they're operating on, the computer system for the training events, and they're not sure how to do certain things, or they're having problems with their training systems, then I help them with their training, with their systems. So that if they have problems, we'll do that additionally. But primarily, I'm a JCR instructor and all that stuff. So I think we're probably going to cut this off here in a minute. I'm not sure how much time I've ran up to as of right now, because normally I have like a little thing to indicate how long it's been going on for, but I don't remember where that was at. Okay, so 54 minutes. So we've been live for 54 minutes. It's about average. We usually do these things for about an hour. So if you are new to the live stream, you've never had a chance to join in on these things, I usually try to do this once a week on Sundays and hang out with all you awesome, amazing people, whether you're subscribed or not subscribed. If you are not subscribed, you should probably just knock that out right now. Just hit that subscribe button and let's see that number go up. Don't mess with me and unsubscribe. I don't want to see any of that. All right. But if you're not subscribed, maybe you should subscribe and check out all the other cool stuff that I got going on, and make sure you get the alerts so that you can, you know, see when these live events are. But we usually typically try to do this for about an hour, hang out live, and then you can see it after it's live as well. So that's all the fun stuff that I kind of do here. And then if you want, where is it at? You can also check out my merch. If you are interested in a Chaos t-shirt, Chaos hoodie, even a Chaos mug, you can get a Chaos mug. All sorts of fun stuff over here. If you want to visit ChristopherChaos.com/store, just go to ChristopherChaos.com and you can check out, hit the Chaos store button that's over here, and it'll take you here. Right now, it looks like they have a coupon thing going on with 20% off. Looks like it expires today though. So if you're watching this on January 28th and you want to go check out one of these shirts, some of them are cheap, some of them are a little bit pricier, which I hate. I don't set the prices of them, but there are some that are only like 15 bucks. So if you wanted to get a t-shirt for 15 bucks, you could, but if not, I won't be offended. Either way, I am just happy that you guys are here hanging out with me for this live stream. So whether you buy a shirt, whether you subscribe to the channel, whether you're just here because it randomly popped up in your subscription feed or whatever, then cool. I'm just glad you guys are here hanging out. So, but yeah, so we'll go ahead and end this here. I really appreciate you guys coming, hanging out for the live stream. We'll do this again on Sunday, next Sunday. I'm going to go hang out with my girlfriend and watch the Royal Rumble. And then this week I'll work on a new video that explains about how the uniforms work for everything and all that stuff. So be sure to come back, look for that video, and work on a lot more cool content, more videos. Tomorrow, all new episode of my 30-day challenge for Army PT. Really, that first week was kind of broken up into 2 episodes because it kind of ran a little long. So really that the episode tomorrow is kind of the rest of that first week of me actually doing some physical training. And that kind of keeps me ahead a little bit. Over here, I've got a cool, like, water hydration pack, and it's actually my first sponsorship. So not the next video, not the video after that, but the one probably after that one, be the second, third week in February, whatever it is, we'll have a sponsor, which I'm really excited about. And I'll tell you guys more about that probably when it gets closer to that. But I'll have an actual sponsor, and I'm going to incorporate this hydration pack into that week's video and kind of give a review of it that's kind of tied in with me kind of working out and stuff. So I'm really excited about my very first sponsorship for this channel. Hopefully it works out and we get more sponsors and makes it a lot more funner to do cool stuff, because then I have some extra funds to do cool stuff with. So thank you for hanging out for the live stream. You guys are awesome. If you are watching this after it was live, make sure to leave comments down in the comment section, and maybe I get to them in the next live stream. But for the most part, you guys are awesome. You rule. I'm Christopher Chaos. I'll see you guys next time. See ya.